This video is going to be on reasons why I use scarf joints for building arches. You know, there are a lot of reasons to build something. I look into building arches for practical reasons, like I wanted to use less material. It costs a lot of money, and it's wasteful of just the raw material. We're needing to think in terms of using less and being more effective with the materials we use. We don't want to just throw things away like we used to. When I was first starting out, using materials was just it seemed endless, and now it's much more restrictive, so we have to be careful about that. So use of materials is one of the reasons I used to use the scarf joint. There were other methods that just seemed wasteful. Of good clear wood, you needed to be clear if you're going to bend it without and put stress on it and pre-stress it. Also, if you're going to laminate it in thin members, you had to rip it down to fairly thin to get a tight arc, and that would half of your waste went into sawdust. So yeah, using it, the better use of materials. And then there's using flat panels on the scarf joint. I'm very excited about that, and I built my structure using plywood panels that were glued to the frame and also glued along the edges of the plywood, so that made a big difference in its strength. It made the plywood itself a part of the frame, the structure. So that's one of the reasons why I like using scarf joints. But some of the more esoteric reasons are based on things like I wanted to use sacred geometry. I like the idea of using sacred geometry. I came into it's something that's using arcs and using math that uses whole numbers, and the equilateral triangle is a good basis for an arc. So there's a lot of mystery that goes along with using geometry, and a lot of mysticism, a lot of the secret knowledge of the past is kind of hidden away in just plain sight. It's the invisible, and working with the invisible ideas of perfect concepts in order to make something physical in the world. And these are pretty fun things to work with. For me, I enjoy looking into that and working with that. So it's one of the reasons why I chose to use these triangles and the angles and the shape. It becomes very powerful. I also know that when you use a curved flat roof, then that takes the water off. It does come up to a flat point, sort of a dead spot in the middle if you're using it like a complete Quonset hut or something like this. And this creates sort of a collapse point for it. I mean, a lot of force is now working down on your arc. But with a Gothic arch, with that point coming up, it really can take a lot more stress on the ridge, because more is transferred down, not out so much. So the transfer of energy down is really effective, and that's one of the reasons why I like to use this Gothic arch for building. The faceted faces, the use of material, and the esoteric feel of the arc. They've been around for a long, long time. And even in nature, you know, if you take a branch and you bend it, it creates an arc. And limbs and trees are constantly creating these arches that support more weight out on the ends. It's a natural, very powerful, strong structure. Indigenous tribes use these arced, thin branches for making their dwellings, and they have a nice feel to them when you're inside them. When you make a I've been in sweats and I've been in some small structures like this that they have a feeling of a human scale. They feel like this is the size it needs to be, and this is what I want to be in right now. So I think we need to get back towards that idea as much as possible, and not building huge mansions for a small family. Our house is 680 square feet. So I'm used to living in relatively small space. And sometimes I feel like it's a big place. It needs a lot of maintenance. And as we're getting older, it's becoming more and more expensive to maintain, even just a small space. So I know that smaller and smaller spaces will be a good way to go. I think the hive of these huge skyscrapers that have lots of little buildings. And when I was in New York when I was much younger, and I saw the idea of how we could house the masses, the poor, and put them in these awful, awful buildings, it made me cry to look at them and to think that people were actually living in them. It also makes me cry when I see these domed tents all over the city now, the homeless and that sort of thing. So we need to find some sort of halfway, a good solid structure that can be insulated, that allows for enough movement for a person to get by. I met a homeless man who was just asking for a space for a little something so that he could, it would only cost him $600 a month. He could afford $600 a month, and that seemed like a reasonable amount of money for a single person to be spending on rent. To the fact that it costs $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 for a small space in Portland, it's terribly expensive, and it has to be expensive for people who are investing or buying these places, and then they have to maintain them, and the cost of maintaining larger structures are getting more and more expensive. So these are reasons why I'm thinking about these small structures that feel good, have a sense of human size, have a sense of human scale. They have the curves are just naturally soothing. Not a square box just feels like that, being in a box. And I know cats love boxes, but I think they might love a curved space just as much. So anyway, that's my take on why I'm building with arches. If you like what you've seen here, give me a like. And if you would like to see more of these videos, just hit subscribe and you'll be sure to stay on top of all of the videos I'm putting out. So here's to your good health and well-being. May you have great well-being.